You have to maintain your character of being who God called you to be. Okay, let's go back. And don't start at, he done said that before. Don't do that to me. When the police had stopped me, go ahead and say it. He done said that before. Get it off your chest. Go ahead so other folks can hear this, since you already are, okay? And when the police had stopped me, I'm looking in the mirror, and at that time I was teaching on faith. Now, what a better time to try the teacher that's teaching on the very thing that he's teaching. And so this is what I got out of that. I'm teaching on faith, so that means now I have to experience this brand new faith herald message, the paper that's coming out today, what I'm teaching on, which is faith, not last year, last week, last month. I'm talking about today. So it was that day I was being tested about what I was teaching. And God said, I want you to remember this. So I'm sitting there, and the police walks up to me and says, where are your license, registration? How they do what they do. And so I gave them all the stuff that she needed, and I asked her, what are you stopping me for? Because I didn't know. That's sad, isn't it? Police stopping you, and you don't know why you're being stopped. There's something not right about that. That sounds like either I don't know, I'm innocent, or I'm pretending that I don't know. All right. So now she goes back to her car. Excuse me. And then God said to me, now say that too. Say, God said to me. Okay. And then God said to me, say you're not going to get a ticket. Now, remember, all of the premise of what we're talking about is centered around the word that God gives you that you hold on to. See, that's why I'm saying this again for all of the old people that I heard that before, okay? So he said a word to me. So then I grabbed the word, and what you do when you grab a word? When you grab a word, you repeat what was said. I'm not going to get a ticket. That's how the principles of God works. Yes. It works on the fact of God saying something to you. Yes. I can't get it up fast enough. God saying something to you, and you are saying what God said. Amen. Yes. Yes. Remember, thou shalt have whatsoever thou say. So I said what he said, I'm not going to get a ticket. She comes back with a ticket. The very thing that I'm saying, trying the words of what God had given to me. I'm talking to somebody that can understand where I'm at right now. So she came there and brought me what I actually said out of my mouth that I wasn't going to get, and she's showing it to me. How many times the enemy will show you contrary to what you are saying out your mouth? How many times he'll show you something that God said that it is contrary? But who am I going to believe right now? Am I going to continue to believe God when I'm looking at this? Stood there with this ticket. Myself went through turmoils emotionally on the inside. Just seconds upon seconds upon seconds upon seconds of first. I'm going through emotion. God, I'm letting you in on my inner thoughts. God, what's going on here? You told me I wasn't going to get this, God. But I'm looking at it. You told me, God, that I wasn't going to be sick like this. But I'm feeling every pain of it. I'm going through. You told me that I wouldn't get put out. But I'm looking at the eviction notice on the door. You told me, and Lord, I'm getting exactly what you told me that I wasn't going to get. What are you going to do in a place like that? The disciples were saying, we were so tried by the enemy until we despaired even of life. We were going through so much on the outside and on the inside. When he said on the outside, they saw circumstance and situation coming at them. And on the inside, that stuff that was coming at them was getting on the inside of them also. That's the job of the enemy. The enemy wants to get inside you. See, he can't do the damage on the outside. And as long as you keep him trapped on the outside, he can't. If the storm is coming and all your shutters are up, you can sit down and read a book. And no matter how much whistling the wind is doing and how boisterous it sound and how dangerous and dramatic it sound, I'm at peace inside the place that I'm at. I'm trying to knock on some doors of a reality truth. See? So she brought the ticket. So I'm looking at the ticket and now I'm conferring with God. I'm not challenging her. See, y'all have been challenged to people and you don't challenge the circumstance. You go to the one that promised you. And you ask him what's going on. You know, God. I said, God, you told me. See, these are my personal experience of what God is doing in my life. If you don't take out time to dissect your life, to see different frames of different things that God is doing, then you will be in the red every time you're challenged with something you believe in God for. You have to separate the frame of what God had done. He did this. In my chronicles of my mind, there are many things in the back of my mind that God has done for me that nobody can take from me because I know we sealed it and God stamped his seal of approval and said that was done. It is finished. Like he said on the cross, this is finished. Let's go to the next file. That's how it happens. Let's go to the next file. And let's work on this file right here. Now you're being charged with this. Now, he said this about you, and he said that about you, and he said that. And now he's showing you what he told you. Whose report?
So I said, that's how I'm gonna do it. I rigged my cell so that way it could stay unlocked. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. Everybody was out for breakfast, and they were moving around, going in the line, going to get their food. And when everybody went back in their cells, it's time for it to close. But my cell was rigged a certain way. So that way it will close but won't lock. And then when the officer made his last rounds, I was gonna leave out and hang myself. I had everything ready, prepared. I was sitting on my bunk and I started just contemplating it, seeing it in my head. There was something inside was just like not convinced. I didn't even have nothing on my mind. I just felt inside like there has to be another way. I don't even know where that came from at the time. Man, but I promise, the moment I said that, I heard the voice of God in my cell said, try me. Life before Jesus, I would probably say that in maybe 2 words, I would say not Jesus. I say that because growing up in Washington, D.C., the neighborhood, it was called Paradise, right? Funny name to name a project neighborhood called Paradise. Growing up in that neighborhood, you have a lot of crime, violence, drugs, no gangs. Like in D.C., it's more like neighborhoods. So like whatever neighborhood or street you was from, that was kind of like your thing, what you represented. But it still come with the same, nonsense, the same drama, the same vicious mentality, crabs in a basket, right? I had my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters, and we actually went to church though. But it's funny, the reason why I say like not Jesus, because we went to church, but I knew nothing about Jesus, like nothing. My mom played Kirk Franklin a lot. And it was weird because I remember one time he had this nice song and I liked it a lot, that when I was like preparing drugs and stuff to sell on the corners, I was like, I want to hear that song. So I was like bagging drugs to Kirk Franklin. So it was really confusing to know like, okay, my parents are in church. We're going to church as a young age, but I don't know what to do with this life. I didn't even consider it a lifestyle. It was just like, you go to church. Church is in your neighborhood, all right? This is where people go when they want to feel better and get ready for the week. That's what I thought church was. I didn't have a desire for God, a desire for church. I didn't have a desire for anything spiritual. All I knew was when I come outside, it's hundreds of people in my neighborhood. because I'm from a projects. The difference between projects and different streets is that you have even gates that surround you, that enclose you in, right? Or there's different buildings that make up like one neighborhood. So it's not like streets with cars passing by. It's like everybody that lives here, come outside. So it can be 200 people outside at one given time. So I knew when I come outside, that's what I see. I see money. I see nice cars. I see clothes, fancy clothes. I also see just the like people, quote unquote, loving each other and being family. Because in my house, the structure for family wasn't as strong as now I know it could have been, right? So when I go outside, they happy to see you outside. It's nothing like being in the house, getting ready, like maybe brushing your teeth, and then you get a knock on the door. And it's your friends like, you coming outside? They already beat you outside. Like that feels good. That's somebody wanting to hang with you, right? That's what I kind of gravitated to. Because in my house, we had struggles. My dad was the only one working. My mom has complications, right? So she couldn't work a lot. She's have hearing complications, so she couldn't get certain jobs. Me and my sisters, we're around the same age. We're young. So of course we're not working. My dad was struggling. It was a lot. I actually look back now and I honor him for the hard work that he had to put in. But back then as a kid, you just look at it like you don't have nothing. And you look at your parents like they're not doing anything for you. You see other kids and we all live in the same community, right? But why do they have and I don't have? So in my house, nobody really cared for each other that much or showed that they did, right? It was always about my dad trying to survive, my mom trying to be content with her situation, my sisters trying to make it out here as females, and me, now I'm in the streets. And that's how I lived my life growing up. I began, doing street things around 12 years old. I started selling drugs at 12. I remember a time when I went to someone's house and he literally sold the drugs to me at 12 and thought nothing of it. And from that day moving forward, I was a drug dealer. And people would literally buy drugs from me. Adults, people, moms. It was some of my friends' parents who would buy drugs from me. Some of them knew, some of them didn't know. So when that would happen, I didn't feel like power, but I felt like, man, I can take this and build upon it and have something of my own. Because when you grow up in an environment that's like kind of rocky and shaky, you want something for yourself. You want something you can call your own. You want something that nobody can take from you, that you can make for yourself and survive. So I thought that being a drug dealer, right, was like I was gonna make a name for myself. Because in DC, you got all these big drug dealers, right? I mean, you can turn on YouTube and just type in drug dealers from DC and you see all types of drug dealers. And I thought in my mind that one day I will be someone that somebody look up to or look up and see his lifestyle. Because that's how I felt. It's weird when you can feel like you're good at doing something bad, like you're good at it. And lo and behold, living that lifestyle for what I would say from 12 to 22, 10 years straight, it caught up to me, right? I tried to do as much as I can to make a name for myself. I had all of my friends. I literally taught them like how to sell drugs, right? I remember one time I went to my best friend's window. He lived on the first floor and I had to like reach my hand up through the like black gate on the window because it's like got black gates on it because in the projects and when you're in a bad neighborhood, those gates are there because like you're in a bad neighborhood and somebody can just climb in through your window, right? So they put those black steel gates around your window. So I had to stick my hand through there and kind of tap on his window. And I was like, hey, you trying to make some money? I'm selling drugs now. Like, come with me. And I brought him on a team and all my other friends and we selling drugs. But with selling drugs, you got to now protect what's yours because you got other people that don't like what you're doing. You got other people that's looking at you, seeing you one way down, and now you got money and they want to take what you have. So we had to start carrying guns. So I was carrying a gun from 12 years old. A 12-year-old carrying a gun around. I'm sneaking guns in school. I'm riding with guns on the bus. Like at 12 years old. I can't imagine now at 12, like seeing a 12-year-old walking to see him and he has a gun on him. I couldn't imagine that, but that's what I was doing, trying to protect what was mine. And when you're carrying guns, you even get locked up with it or you have to use it. And in my case, it was a situation where I used it. I used a gun to take somebody's life at 22 years old. I look back now and I regret that situation with everything that I have in me. I see so many ways it could have went, but it happened. I understand now that everybody has a decision to make. You're not forced to do anything. You know, in those times and in those moments where you feel like, I just have to do this, I wish somebody would have told me, no, you don't. No, you don't. There's always options, right? There's always options. Depending on your environment, it'll speak to you and tell you like how to think, how to react. And back then I didn't choose the right environment to be around, and it led me to taking someone's life. I remember a time when I was locked up and I was talking about my situation to someone, and they looked at me and said, that's not normal. And I thought that was a weird response to me telling them my story. I was like, what do you mean that's not normal? He was like, you're telling it as if like you had to do it, like it's normal, like it's the normal reaction to something. And it was like, people just don't walk around with guns. That's not a normal thing to do.
Wow.
And it hit me. And I was like, it's not the norm. It kind of woke me up in that moment. But now I'm locked up and I'm faced with a life sentence for first-degree murder. And I'm sitting in that cell, man, and reality struck. As soon as those mechanical doors started moving by themselves, and it's making like a clanging sound, like cling, 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 and then it go boom, it slams to let you know that you can't pry this open, you can't wiggle your way out of this, you're here. And I was sitting there like, wow, I'm here. I'm faced with a decision in my life where I thought I was taking control. Now I don't have no control. No control of my life. I thought that the thing that I was doing with my life was what needed to be done, but now I'm here facing my life and I don't have no control. And I'm sitting there pondering. Prison is so loud. It's so loud in jail. Just imagine 120 people, at least one person talking to somebody. That's 60 conversations going on at one time. It's so chaotic. It's hard to think. It's hard to like relax. It's just loud noise all day. So I'm sitting there trying to think, trying to ponder on my life, but it's so much confusion around. I'm sitting on my bunk and I'm like, how did I end up in this situation? How did my life get here? When I simply thought that where I grew up and the things that was happening, this is what I need to do. But now I'm faced with this decision. And the thing is, you know you special, or you know like God is singling you out when you're the only one that usually go down for things that other people seem like they're getting away with. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking like that. I was trying to get out of there. Because in my neighborhood, people find a way out. Thinking back then, the way my mind was, when you locked up for like murder or a violent charge that involves someone losing their life, you know, they say that that's the hardest thing to convict someone of. So my mind was like, I can get out of this. And I was sitting on my bunk just thinking, how am I going to win in this situation? How am I going to get out of this? Two things came to mind. I said, I do not want to spend the rest of my life in prison. That's not an option. I am not going down. That is not the way that I thought my story was going to be. That is not how I thought people were going to talk about me. And my name would be passed down through the streets. I was like, no. And I didn't want to come back out and have to live the same way and potentially have to continue to do those type of things. I didn't want that either. And I didn't want no one to take my life either. So I said, I know how I could win. I'll just take my own life. And I thought about it and it made sense. It made sense, not because I was going through a lot of pain or stress or pressure. It made sense because I still wanted to be in control, to the point where I was willing to take my own life just so I can still stay in control of my destiny. That's vicious. And I was convinced because that's what pride would do. Pride makes you convinced of things that you believe you can control. So I said, okay. Talking to myself, I'm like, this is it. I never thought that I'll get to this point, but this is it. I'm like, okay. And the type of person I was, if anything came to my mind to do, I never really second guessed it. And I didn't care what nobody else thought about it. I didn't think about family. I didn't think about writing a note or leaving something behind for no loved one. I had a son at the time who was 2. I didn't think about him. I just was like, this is how I want my story to be. It's so strange because I look back now and I'm like, how did I think that winning was taking my life? So it was in that moment I said, I'm just going to plan it. I planned it. I figured out how I can rig my cell to keep it unlocked so that I can run out on the top tier. Because in prison, some prisons anywhere, or most of them, majority have 2 tiers. You have a bottom tier where you have cells around. And in the middle, there's like tables where people eat. And then you have a top tier. It's cells around, right, with nothing in the middle, just a space. Usually when you come into prison, you have a solid port where there's a hallway and a door. So it's like the outside of the prison tier that you're on has an outside door. You come in, then you have to wait inside of a room. And then there's another door that you get buzzed in. So I said, okay, it'll take at least a minute or 2 for the guards to run to this tier. Then they have to get buzzed in. Then they have to wait for that door to close and then get buzzed in another door. So I'm like, I have some time to run out my cell, run to the top tier and hang myself. And it'll be at least 3-4 minutes before they come to get me, if not longer. That's if they even want to come, because the guard on the tier can't do anything because they have to maintain the tier for the rest of the inmates. They can't just run to one situation. They have to call for help. So they literally will have to watch me hanging on the speaker calling for help. And they might not even want to come. So I said, that's how I'm going to do it. I rigged my cell so that way it could stay unlocked. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. Everybody was out for breakfast and they were moving around, going in the line, going to get their food. And when everybody went back in their cells, it's time for it to close. But my cell was rigged a certain way. So that way it will close but won't lock. And then when the officer made his last rounds, I was going to leave out and hang myself. I had everything ready, prepared. I was sitting on my bunk and I started just contemplating it, seeing it in my head. Because looking back now, I realized everything that you see, like what you see yourself doing, you're more than likely going to do it if you see yourself doing it. If you walk through it, you'll and see yourself doing it, it's going to happen. So I was picturing what it's going to feel like, what it's going to be like. And I was ready. I sat up on my bunk. A couple of tears started rolling down my eyes. My cell buddy went to sleep. And I said, this is it. But then immediately something was inside of me. I started thinking about like people. I started thinking about my son. I started thinking about life. And in that moment, I said, man, it has to be another way. This was literally the first time I ever decided to change my mind on something that I wanted to do. But I felt like there was something inside was just like not convinced. I didn't even have nothing on my mind. I just felt inside like there has to be another way. I don't even know where that came from at the time. Man, but I promise, the moment I said that, I heard the voice of God in my cell said, try me. And it wasn't like spooky or like the movies or like I had to look up and try to figure out like, where's this voice coming from? No, it went from me saying, okay, this is about to happen, to sitting up saying, wait, it has to be another way, to hearing God's voice say, try me. I knew that it was God. It's like inside of me, I just knew. It was a knowing. Like, I didn't say, who is that, right? I was just like, I know. It was like this voice was so familiar, like I just knew it. And it brought so much freedom and joy to me in that moment. I'm thinking about it. I can see it. Like, I can see the day, and I can see myself just literally transitioning from crying to about to take my life to hearing God's voice and just immediately feeling loved. And my very next words were, "You want me? You want me?" I said, "You want my life?" And right after that, I said, "You can have it." I just started talking to like God, talking to Jesus like, "You can have it. You can have it. You can have my life. You can have it. If you want it, you can have it." And then I started making declarations. I was like, "I'll live for you. I'll never turn my back on you. I'll never turn my back on you. I'll live for you. I'll live for you." Like out of nowhere, I just started saying this like he was sitting right there in front of me. I said, "If you want my life, you can have mine." I said, "You didn't turn your back on me. I won't turn my back on you. I'll never leave you." And I said that for probably about maybe 10 minutes straight. I just kept saying the same thing over and over and over. My tears dried up. The feelings of taking my life went away. And I just sat there and was praising God. And next thing you know, it was time to come out in the morning for like early showers. And I ran to the phone and called my mom and told her what just happened. And she was rejoicing and praising God. My life before Jesus, no joy. Because looking at that moment and the joy I felt knowing that God, not a religious figure. I'm talking about God. Not a sermon that came back to mind. I'm talking about God. Like, he came in the cell with me and said, "Try him." Me, a murderer. I'm in prison for murder. You would think that somebody like that deserves to die. You would think that a God's response to someone breaking his law or committing something like that he would pass by them and choose someone else that's seemingly more worthy or a better candidate. And I think back and I just say, I didn't have no questions like why me at first. Those questions came kind of later. But in that moment, I was thinking, like, you're that good? The God that I went to church to sit there and try to not fall asleep and watch everybody pray and praise you and, preach about you like you're really real and you're actually good. I was amazed that he would want me. And I felt so loved. And I realized my life before Christ didn't have true love. It didn't have it. Because now I know what it is. Yes, you have family who love you and they do their very best, but I'm talking about that no judgment love, that take your place type of love, the love that understands where you are and know where you are. My life before Christ was full of a lot of anxiety, stress, comparison. I compare myself to people all the time because in the neighborhood that I grew up in, you have status. It's status everywhere. You got people that's popular. You have people that's getting money. You have your athletes. You have status all around you. So comparing yourself is easy and simple. Like, that's what you do. And you try to be better or, hang around people that's doing good. So my life without Christ, I dealt with a lot of comparison. Not content with who I was. Didn't even know who I was. But in Christ now, finding him or him finding me that day, like knowing where I was, and revealing himself to me, it's like if God himself accepts me and wants me, like right now, you want to do life with me. You want me to be yours, like right now. It threw comparison out the window. Because what do I have to compare myself to anybody now for when God himself says he accepts me? Now, the acceptance part, I struggle with that even in Christ. The comparison, I didn't compare myself. But the acceptance, man, the enemy came at me hard with that. He literally, now I know I look back, I knew it was him. He literally would plant thoughts to say that, yeah, you saved, but you still gonna die. Like your life isn't gonna be anything. Like you're still gonna die. God just saved you so that way you can just die and go to heaven. Like you're not gonna live long. You're not gonna have a blessed life. you still have to pay for what you did. That shame, that guilt, and that condemnation came like a flood immediately after salvation, because I started thinking about all the things that I've done and the thing that had me in prison. So I'm still in prison and I'm still facing this charge. And now I have Jesus. So I have to face what I did with Jesus. And I struggled. I struggled with believing that his acceptance was like complete. I struggled with believing that all of the emotions of guilt and shame weren't real, because it felt real. Those feelings felt like God loves you, but you got to still pay. And I lived with that almost my entire time in jail. I thought that God saved me, but he still needed to exact some type of restitution from my life. And I couldn't live free. I couldn't live free in him. I would be serving God, praising God, loving on God, loving people, being a witness for him, and then go in my cell and beat myself up and bang myself over the head like with a hammer, like a invisible hammer, just tearing my thoughts up. I knew his love was real because in my heart, and it's like the same moment that happened, I lived that moment every day. I can feel his presence with me. I knew he was with me. But when it came to my thoughts that I was thinking, it wasn't like correlating. It's like I knew, but my thoughts were saying something different. I knew he forgave me, but my mind was telling me that, no, you have to pay. I knew that he still wanted to use me, but then my thoughts was like, only to a certain limit, because nobody like you can't fully be used. And it literally like tortured me to the point where it even was messing up my physical body. I was under so much shame and guilt that my body started reacting to it. I would wake up with pains in my body out of nowhere, went to the prison hospital, got x-rays done. They couldn't find anything. It would be so bad that my entire skeleton, from like my face to my shoulders, my arms, fingers, legs, knees, shins, toes were in pain. I couldn't even walk around the jail. I couldn't go out to eat sometimes. I had to stay in my bed. I had to get my cellmate to sneak me back food from the chow hall because I was in too much pain to walk. And when you injure yourself in prison, that's not a good thing, because it's people who prey on like people who injured. You got people who are on drugs in jail. You got people who are in gangs, and they look for people that's weak that they can prey on. So if you're injured, they don't care if you're a Christian. They don't care if you preaching in the church or in the church in the jail. They don't care, because if they're in a gang or if they're on drugs, they need to even get their fix, pay back somebody, or do what they have to do for their gang, and they're going to choose the easiest target. So if I'm walking around limping and on crutches, then they can easily take advantage of it. So I wasn't going out to eat sometimes because I didn't want to be a prey to that. My body I would literally have to cry myself to sleep. So much pain. I'm crying out to God. Like, if you save me, why am I going through this? If you actually do love me like you say you do, why isn't this going away? Like, I was remembering, because I'm reading the word, of course, getting in my Bible. Certain things was coming to my mind that I'm asking God about. Like when he told Paul how many things he'll have to suffer for his name. So I was like, am I suffering for your name? Like, is this what it means to suffer for your name? God wasn't answering. He was quiet. So here I am, still got this charge. I'm telling people all about Jesus, but yet I'm going through this in my body, and God isn't answering me. I don't hear his voice anymore like he spoke before. I'm thinking he left. Because in my mind, I computed, if something's happening to you, then I mean, God has done it and he's not there. Like, if it's not being fixed, then he's not there. Like, I computed, if something's bad happening or something wrong is happening, then God is off doing something else and he allowed it to happen and he don't want no parts of it. That's what I thought. Because I still didn't have enough experience with him. Like, he was teaching me at the time. So I was complaining. I was complaining to God, crying, fussing. I probably called him some names. I was still growing him up. I probably said some things to God that, and I can't remember one time where he spoke back. It was quiet. I wasn't used to that. I was used to him. Good morning, how you doing? And talking to me, and we talking back. I'm reading the word, and he's speaking, revelating me. To now, going through this, I don't hit nothing. I do realize something that was happening, though. Without him speaking, I realized that I was still able to have faith. Because I was looking back, and I was even questioning myself one time. Man, it's like I'm reliving it, right? I can feel the emotion of it. I was asking myself, why haven't you stopped? I was asking myself that, like, if you're upset with God and God is seemingly like has left, he saved you and he gone. He saved you and, he's on to the next person to say, why haven't you stopped going so hard for him? I was asking myself that, why are you still fasting and praying and worshiping God and preaching and ministering and leading people to Christ? Why are you still going so hard? And I realized that in those moments when he wasn't speaking, it was like strangely taking me deeper in love with him, because I realized that in those moments when I hear his voice, it's fun, it's exciting, it brings joy. But then at times when he wasn't speaking, I was really seeing what I was made of in him. If I'm really doing this for him. And I was able to know that I'm doing it for him. And it wasn't just a moment that happened and I'm just super excited and living on this euphoria and this high. Because right now I'm going through it. And even to this day, I still have those same complications in my body. The pain of it isn't there, but I still have it in my body. It's gotten better since then, but it's still there. And fast forward, when it was time to face the judge for my charge, I remember being behind the courtroom in the bullpen, right? They call it a bullpen because it's like, that's not the actual name of it, but think about it, bulls, like they're in this pen and they're all in there together, right? And it's like they're all waiting to be released. So they call it a bullpen because it's a bunch of animals, right? And people that's so-called vicious in one space waiting to be released. So I was in the bullpen and I was like, God, whatever's going to happen today, I just give you the rights to do it. I didn't want to lie about what happened. I was at the point in my walk where I wasn't going to lie. I wasn't going to make up some story and say a whole bunch of stuff. I told God that whatever I have to say, I'm just going to tell the truth. And whatever your decision is, God, I'm good with that. And I got sentenced to 20 years. I come out of the courtroom. I say my little spiel with the judge because they ask you, do you have anything to say after they sentence you? I said my spiel. I go back to the jail. There was a pastor that was incarcerated. I know, right? A pastor being incarcerated. And when he saw me come back, he knew I went to court. When he saw me come back, he asked me, he was like, how much time did you get? How much? Because everybody at that time knew me for serving the Lord, right? They knew me for praising God. They knew me for being a witness for Jesus, even around the whole entire jail. So this pastor, he was on a whole nother tier and he knew of me. So he said, what happened? And I told him, I said, I took 20 years. I took a plea deal. That's what I feel like God had told me to do. And he was like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah. I said, because I was talking to my lawyer on the phone and he asked me, like, did I want to take this plea deal or go to trial? At first, I told him I wanted to go to trial because I said, I've been preaching and teaching the gospel to people for all these months. Now it's time for me to show the faith, to show that I believe God. And for me, doing that was going to trial. But for some strange reason, my lawyer, he wasn't feeling that decision. He said, man, you can't go to trial. You can't go to trial. And I'm like, what's going on? Why are you saying that? He was like, please, you just cannot. You need to take this plea deal. You cannot go to trial. Now, it was weird because lawyers, they don't get involved like that. They don't give their opinion, their personal opinion. So with that, he's putting himself on the line for giving a personal opinion. But I guess it was something in him trying to convince me. I don't know if God was using him or not at the time. He wasn't a Christian. But what he said to me, he was like, man, you've been such a witness to my life. He said, I don't even pay nobody no attention when they tell me they gave their life to God. They're living for God. They're reading their Bible. He said, I don't pay no mind. He said, can you imagine how many people I serve who say that? He was like, but it's something different about you. And in my heart right now, I feel led to tell you that. So I was like, I don't know. So I had my mom on the phone and I said, Mom, what you think? She said, whatever you feel like God is telling you, son, I stand by you. And she told the lawyer that. The lawyer went so far to say, call his dad. And I'm like, wait, something is happening on his phone. This lawyer is risking everything to convince me, like, and I felt like it didn't have to do with money. It didn't have to do with anything. I just felt like something is up. I need to be paying attention to what he's saying. But I just said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to trial, man. I'm trusting God. Whatever God going to do, he going to do it this way. I hang the phone up. I run in my cell. I lay down on the floor and I started crying. The moment I closed my eyes, I saw a picture of a ram when I closed my eyes. And I knew exactly what that meant from like reading the word, because that's what happened in the Bible. God used a ram so that Abraham wouldn't have to kill his son, because it's a picture of Jesus being our substitute. And he told Abraham, he said, now I know you trust me. And those words rang in my head, now I know you trust me. So I said,
amen. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path.
Givelify is giving simplified. Givelify is the simplest, most beautiful way to give and track donations to the place of worship or charity of your choice. You're not limited to the cash you have on hand. There's no need to write checks, and there are no complicated forms to fill out or text message codes to remember. Givelify automatically pinpoints your location and intelligently identifies the fundraiser, worship service, or conference you're attending without the need to search. Since Givelify automatically detects where you are, making a donation can be completed in as few as 3 taps. Tap 1. Use one of the pre-configured denominations to choose your donation amount. Tap 2. Select the campaign to which you'd like to contribute. Tap 3. With your stored credit or debit card, complete your donation in 1 tap and get an immediate donation receipt. Setting up recurring giving is a simple 2-tap process. Tap the frequency you'd like and you'll never forget to make your gift. Givelify lets you easily see your complete donation history. Mark the place of worship you normally attend as your home for quick 1-tap access. Givelify. Tap, give, done.